So I looked it up. 14 years, 7 months, and 15 days ago was the last time I talked about homosexuality in the pulpit. I did such a lousy job, I thought I'd leave the subject alone for a while. I probably would have left it alone still, except the session of this church asked me to preach on the topic this week because it's come up a fair amount in the Presbyterian church. So I have taken up the task. As I was speaking to my sister-in-law the other night, I told her my text was Romans 1:18-32, and she said, well, you're certainly taking this one on head on. It is the most difficult text in many ways, and I have to tell you, in some ways, the most offensive. And those of you who know the text, who've been hurt by the text, it's fine with me if you want to leave the room for a while. It's a hurtful text, and we've got to figure out how to deal with it in the church as we seek justice in the world. That said, would you listen for what the Spirit might bring out of this text? Paul speaks. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and wickedness of those who by their wickedness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them because God has shown it to them. Ever since the creation of the world, God's eternal power and divine nature, invisible though they are, have been understood and seen through the things God has made. So they are without excuse. For though they knew God, they did not honor God as God or give thanks to God. They became futile in their thinking, and their senseless minds were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools. And they exchanged the glory of immortal God for images resembling a mortal human being or birds or four-footed animals or reptiles. Therefore God gave them up in the lusts of their hearts to impurity, to the degrading of their bodies among themselves, because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie and worshipped and served the creature rather than Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this reason God gave them up to degrading passions. Their women exchanged natural intercourse for unnatural. And in the same way also, men, giving up natural intercourse with women, were consumed with passion for one another. Men committed shameless acts with men and received in their own persons the due penalty for their error, whatever that is. And since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them up to a debased mind and to things they should not have done. They were filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, covetousness, malice, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, craftiness. They're gossips, slanderers, God-haters, insolent, haughty, boastful, inventors of evil, rebellious towards parents, foolish, faithless, heartless, and ruthless. They know God's decree that those who practice such things deserve to die, yet they not only do them, but even applaud others who practice them. Big task. Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. Well, the whole thing came up, because Janie Spahr, who, those of you who don't know her, who was an associate pastor here years ago, went and performed 16 legal same-gender marriages, 2008. There was an anonymous complaint. We'll talk about that later. An anonymous complaint that charged her with disobeying our book of order. And so we had a 3.5-day trial 2 weeks ago. 10 couples bared their souls, really, offered people a chance to see into their lives, the hurt they carried at not being accepted, the joy they felt at being together, the respect they felt for Janie, who was able to stand with them and let them walk through a process that brought them into union together. It was a moving testimony. Those 3 days, I'm told that it changed minds about same-gender marriage. But at the end of it, the Permanent Judicial Commission voted to rebuke Janie Spahr for doing what I believe was the right thing. Now, they were holding their nose while they were doing it. They insisted that they had to because, well, the Book of Order said so. And they are hoping that the Book of Order will be changed someday. But there were at least two people who managed to say, I don't care. The Book of Order also says, out of the other side of its mouth, that we need to draw everybody into the community of God. The Presbyterian Church is not about shutting people out, but gathering them in. And so at least two people managed to get to a place where they could acquit Janie Spahr. I just loved one quote from her. You don't love us if you don't vote for us. It was hurtful. It'll get appealed, and then there will be more things in the paper. And maybe that's what ticked me off. It's pretty hard to get people to come to church. It gets harder when the front page of the IJ says that, well, the Presbyterian Church rebuked Janie Spahr for doing this. It's harder still, and maybe that's why it ticked me off, and we got this ad campaign started. Felt good, but I don't know how much good it did. Have to ask ourselves, though, how we got here. How on earth did the church get here? And it seems to me it might have something to do with passages like this in Romans. And the trouble is I can't throw it out. I told you last week I couldn't throw it out. Remember, in the Presbyterian Church, 2/3 presbyteries, we can kick things out of the text and back into the text, and so I suppose this would be, one that we could get rid of. But I'm not so sure I should. Maybe we need to look at it from an entirely different point of view. I'm going to read the beginning of it. I'm not going to read that other part again. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and wickedness of those who by their wickedness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them because God has shown it to them. Ever since the creation of the world, God's eternal power and divine nature, invisible though they are, have been understood and seen through the things that God has made. They are without excuse. For though they knew God, they did not honor God as God or give thanks to God. What's Paul after here? You after gay people? I don't think so. From the beginning of the creation of the human race, we have been seeking meaning. And we have found that meaning in a search for the presence of God and the purposes of God in the world. Paul understood that. Paul was a fine Jewish rabbi. He'd read the Torah. He knew that God was a God that poured out God's love into us. And it was intended to overflow us so that we could build a society that would bring peace and justice to all. Paul understood that. And so he's complaining about a group of people who suppressed that truth, who simply said, yes, you may think that God is a God that provides meaning, a God of love, but no, we're going to suppress that truth and live as though it is not true. This is Paul's problem right now. He's worried about a society that has no meaning, about lives lived without any meaning. It's what the text is about. I worry about it too sometimes. I was talking to Jan Reynolds about a week and a half ago. We were talking about our teenagers. We were talking about sex ed, and they get great sex education in the schools. Now, we don't have to teach them anything about the facts of life for sure.